My beloved child, something happened around your soulmate that they were never prepared for, and the strangest part is that it began with someone they had never seen before. Your soulmate was moving through an ordinary moment, thinking about completely ordinary things, when a stranger suddenly looked at them with the kind of expression that makes a person stop without knowing why. The stranger did not introduce herself properly. She did not ask for anything. She simply looked at your soulmate and said, "You need to be careful about the person you cannot stop thinking about." Your soulmate froze, because there was only one person those words could have meant you. But what happened next changed the entire meaning of that warning. Don't skip, because the first thing the stranger said sounded like she was trying to push your soulmate away from you, yet the final thing she revealed made your soulmate question everything they had believed about this connection. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because this story did not end with a warning. It began there. Your soulmate tried to laugh it off at first. They asked how this stranger could possibly know anything about their private feelings. The stranger only shook her head and said, "Stay away for a moment. You need to understand who this person really is before you make another decision." Those words landed heavily. Not because your soulmate immediately believed her, but because something about the timing felt almost impossible to ignore. Earlier that same day, your soulmate had been thinking about you more intensely than usual. A memory had returned without warning. Something you once said. A look you once gave them. A moment they had tried to bury because remembering it made everything complicated again. And now, out of nowhere, someone was speaking about you. Your soulmate became quiet. They wanted to walk away, but curiosity kept them standing there. The stranger looked directly at them and asked one question: "Why are you trying so hard to forget someone your heart keeps remembering?" That question changed the atmosphere instantly. Your soulmate had no answer. Maybe they had been pretending the distance between you meant the connection had disappeared. Maybe they had convinced themselves that silence meant closure. Maybe they had listened to too many outside opinions and slowly started doubting what they had once felt so clearly. But when this stranger spoke, every hidden question returned at once. Don't skip now, because this is where the warning took a completely unexpected turn. The stranger said, "I told you to stay away because you are approaching this person with fear instead of truth. If you keep seeing them through other people's opinions, you will never recognize who they actually are." Your soulmate stared at her. That was not what they expected. They thought she was about to say you were wrong for them. They thought she would confirm every doubt that had been planted in their mind. Instead, she began dismantling those doubts one by one. She told your soulmate that sometimes a person becomes afraid of the connection that exposes what they still need to heal, understand, or admit to themselves. She did not claim to know your entire future. She did not promise some impossible outcome. But she noticed something your soulmate had been refusing to acknowledge. Whenever your name entered their mind, they became emotional in a way no ordinary memory could explain. Your soulmate asked, "So who are they?" The stranger paused. And that pause felt longer than it probably was. Then she said something your soulmate would keep replaying afterward: "They are not the story people told you about them." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because your soulmate suddenly remembered every opinion they had accepted without checking for themselves. Every assumption. Every misunderstanding. Every moment when they allowed someone else's interpretation to become louder than their own experience of you. Stay till the end, because the revelation becomes even more personal from here. Your soulmate asked again, "Then who are they really?" The stranger answered carefully. "They are someone who has affected you more deeply than you are willing to admit. Someone whose presence forced you to look at yourself differently. Someone you tried to place in the past while still carrying them into your future thoughts." Your soulmate's expression changed. There are moments when a person hears something that does not give them a new truth, it simply gives words to a truth they already knew. This was one of those moments. Suddenly, your soulmate remembered the times you remained on their mind after conversations ended. The moments when they almost reached out but stopped. The nights when they wondered whether you had moved on. The strange disappointment they felt whenever they imagined you giving your attention to somebody else. And most of all, they remembered one private thought they had never admitted aloud: what if I misunderstood this person completely? That thought returned now with greater force. Something huge is waiting for you, so don't skip, because what the stranger said next is exactly why the title of this message matters. She leaned closer and told your soulmate, "The person you are thinking about is not here to chase you, convince you, or prove their worth to you. If you want the truth about them, stop listening to the noise and look at their actions. Look at what changed inside you after meeting them." Your soulmate went silent again. Because they knew what had changed. They had started questioning what real connection meant. They had become more aware of what they wanted. They had discovered that attraction was not enough. They wanted understanding, loyalty, peace, and emotional honesty. And whether they admitted it or not, you had become connected to those realizations. That is when the stranger's original warning finally made sense. "Stay away," she repeated, but only from the version of this person that fear created in your mind. "If you ever approach them again, approach the real person, not the rumors, not the assumptions, not the old misunderstandings." Your soulmate felt something shift. Not because a stranger had magically decided their future, but because an unexpected conversation forced them to confront questions they had been avoiding. And sometimes that is enough to change everything. If you are still here, remember the angel number 111. Let 111 represent a new perspective, a fresh beginning, and the courage to see something clearly instead of through fear. If that number speaks to you, you can leave 111 in the comments as your personal reminder: I choose clarity. Your soulmate walked away from that conversation differently than they arrived. They kept hearing one sentence: you never really discovered who they were because you were too busy deciding what they might be. Imagine what that realization does to someone. Imagine discovering that the person you tried to forget may have been misunderstood from the beginning. Imagine realizing that some of the distance was not created because the feelings were absent, but because confusion became louder than communication. Your soulmate began replaying old moments with new eyes. Things that once seemed insignificant suddenly felt different. Your patience. Your silence when you could have argued. The way you stepped back instead of forcing yourself into their life. The moments when you showed care without demanding recognition for it. They remembered everything. And then came the detail they could not explain away. Your soulmate checked something connected to you. Maybe an old message. Maybe a photograph. Maybe your name saved somewhere they had not looked in a long time. Whatever it was, it reopened a feeling they believed they had successfully closed. Don't skip. This is where the emotional truth becomes stronger. Your soulmate realized that the stranger had not actually told them to abandon you. She had warned them not to return to you until they were ready to see you clearly. There is a difference. A huge difference. Because returning with the same fears would recreate the same distance. Returning with honesty could create an entirely different conversation. And now your soulmate was thinking about that conversation. What would they say if they finally stopped pretending? Would they admit they missed you? Would they tell you how many times they nearly contacted you? Would they confess that other people's opinions affected them more than they should have? Would they apologize for seeing you through assumptions instead of simply asking you the truth? Those questions followed them long after the stranger disappeared into the crowd. And then something even stranger happened. Your soulmate turned around to find her again. They wanted to ask one final question. But she was already gone. The place was still busy. People were moving everywhere. Yet the person who had interrupted their day and completely changed the direction of their thoughts was nowhere nearby. Your soulmate stood there for a moment, not frightened, just stunned by how quickly everything had happened. And what they did next matters. They opened their phone. They searched for something connected to you. Their finger hovered. They almost made a move. Almost. But something stopped them, not rejection, not anger, but the realization that if they contacted you again, they could not do it casually. They knew the next conversation would have to be real. Stay till the end, because there is one more detail your soulmate remembered right then, and it may be the detail that pushes this entire situation toward its turning point. Before that, remember the angel number 222. Let 222 symbolize balance, patience, and two people learning to understand each other without forcing the outcome. If you want, leave 222 as a reminder to yourself that what is meaningful should be approached with peace, not panic. And for those who choose to support these messages, super thanks is appreciated, and the Ko-Fi link in the description allows support from $8 to $120. Support only if it feels comfortable for you. Your presence here already matters. Now listen carefully. Your soulmate remembered the last genuine moment between you, the moment when you said or did something they did not fully understand at the time. Back then, they may have brushed it aside. Today, after the stranger's words, its meaning suddenly became clear. You were not asking them to choose you blindly. You were asking them to see you clearly. That realization hit them harder than the warning itself. Because now your soulmate is beginning to understand who you really were in their story, not someone who needed to be feared, not someone who needed to be idealized, but someone whose presence brought hidden emotions to the surface and forced important questions into the open. And here is the part they were not prepared for: the stranger never told your soulmate what to do next. She left that choice entirely with them. That means the next chapter depends on what your soulmate does with what they now understand. They can return to the old silence, or they can finally face the truth they have been carrying. They can continue wondering, or they can ask. They can keep replaying the past, or they can create one honest moment in the present. And right now, your soulmate is closer to that decision than they have been in a very long time. Something huge is waiting for you. Stay till the end of this journey, because the next part begins with the one thing your soulmate discovered after they went home, the one detail that made them realize the stranger may have known about a private connection between you that nobody else was supposed to know. The moment your soulmate got home, something they had forgotten was waiting for them, and the instant they saw it, the stranger's warning stopped feeling like a random conversation. It was something connected to you. Something private. Something your soulmate had placed away because looking at it brought back too much emotion. For a few seconds, they simply stood there staring at it, wondering why this particular reminder of you had appeared in their attention on the exact day a stranger had told them, "You still do not understand who this person really is." Don't skip, because what your soulmate remembered next changed the meaning of everything that happened between you. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate picked up that old reminder and immediately returned to a moment from the past day conversation between the two of you that seemed ordinary when it happened. You had said something simple, but strangely specific. At the time, your soulmate did not understand why you said it. Now those words returned with startling clarity. You had told them, in your own way, that one day they might understand you differently when the noise around them became quiet. Back then, they thought it was just another emotional sentence. Tonight, it felt completely different. They sat down and replayed your history from the beginning. Not the version other people had described. Not the version created by assumptions. The actual moments. The first time they noticed you. The first time your presence stayed on their mind longer than expected. The first conversation that felt somehow easier than conversations with people they had known much longer. The first misunderstanding. The first period of silence. The first moment they wondered whether losing contact with you had been a mistake. And one uncomfortable realization slowly began rising above everything else. Your soulmate had spent more time trying to understand why they should stay away from you than trying to understand why they could never completely forget you. That realization shook them. Don't skip here, because the stranger's most important revelation had not even fully revealed itself yet. Your soulmate remembered her exact words. Look at what changed inside you after meeting this person. So they did. They began comparing who they were before meeting you with who they became afterward. Before you, perhaps they could walk away from emotional situations without questioning themselves for very long. Before you, maybe they believed connection should always be simple, immediate, and easy to explain. But after you, something became deeper. They started noticing emotional patterns. They started asking themselves what they genuinely wanted instead of simply accepting what everyone else expected. They began understanding that some people enter our lives not because everything will instantly become perfect, but because their presence reveals what we have been avoiding inside ourselves. And suddenly your soulmate understood why the stranger had warned them to stay away first. It was never about making you disappear. It was about preventing your soulmate from approaching you again while still carrying the same confusion. Because if they returned with suspicion, pride, or assumptions, nothing would change. But if they returned with honesty, everything could. Your soulmate looked down at their phone again. Your name was there. They opened an old conversation. They scrolled slowly. And then they found it. One message from you that they had completely misunderstood when you first sent it. The message was not dramatic. It was not a declaration. It was simply sincere. You had tried to explain that you were never asking them to make an immediate decision. You only wanted them to understand your intentions without allowing other voices to speak for you. Your soulmate read it once. Then again. Then one more time. Suddenly, something inside them felt different. How did I miss this? They thought. That question became uncomfortable because the answer was obvious. They had not really missed it. They had been emotionally overwhelmed when they first read it. They had interpreted your words through their fear instead of through your meaning. Stay till the end, because what happened next was the first sign that your soulmate might actually be preparing to do something different this time. They began typing a message to you. A few words appeared on the screen. Then they erased them. They started again. Erased everything again. A third attempt began. There's something I need to ask you. Their fingers stopped. They stared at the sentence. For the first time, your soulmate understood that contacting you would mean opening a door they had worked very hard to keep closed. And yet, keeping it closed had never truly brought them peace. They placed the phone down. Walked away. Came back. Picked it up again. This was no longer casual curiosity. Something deeper was happening. Your soulmate was trying to decide whether they were finally ready for an honest answer, even if that answer changed everything. If you have reached this moment, remember the angel number 333. Let 333 symbolize clarity, courage, and finally saying what has been left unsaid. If it feels meaningful to you, you can write 333 in the comments as a simple reminder. I choose honest communication. Now listen closely, because your soulmate noticed something else inside the old conversation. There was a date connected to one of your messages. That date brought back another memory. On that exact day, someone close to your soulmate had said something about you. Something negative. Something that influenced the way your soulmate interpreted your next message. Suddenly, your soulmate saw the sequence clearly. First, someone planted doubt. Then you reached out. Then your soulmate read your words while already expecting something bad. What if that entire moment had been misunderstood from the beginning? The possibility disturbed them not because anyone necessarily intended harm, but because your soulmate realized how easily outside opinions had shaped their perception. They began mentally separating what they actually knew about you from what they had merely heard about you. The difference was enormous. What they actually knew came from moments shared directly with you, how you spoke when nobody else was around, how you behaved when there was nothing to gain, how you reacted when things became difficult, how you respected space even when it hurt, and how your presence kept returning to their thoughts despite distance. What they had merely heard consisted mostly of speculation. Maybe this person is. Perhaps they want. You should be careful because. Your soulmate suddenly understood that, maybe, had controlled far too many important decisions. Don't skip. The next realization is the one that truly explains what the stranger meant when she revealed who you really are. Your soulmate remembered asking her, "Are you saying this person is meant for me?" But the stranger had never answered that question directly. Instead, she said, "I am saying you have never given yourself the chance to discover who they are without fear making the introduction." That sentence returned now with incredible force. The stranger had not given them a magical prediction. She had challenged their perspective. And sometimes the most life-changing revelation is not being told what will happen, it is recognizing what you have been refusing to see. Your soulmate began thinking about one particular quality in you that had always confused them. You did not behave exactly the way they expected someone with strong feelings to behave. There were moments when you stepped back. Moments when you became quiet. Moments when you refused to chase clarity endlessly. Your soulmate once interpreted that as a lack of care. Now they began wondering whether it had actually been self-respect. Maybe you cared deeply while understanding that love cannot be forced. Maybe you wanted communication but refused to manipulate someone into choosing you. Maybe your distance had not meant indifference. Maybe it meant you were waiting for them to come toward you willingly. That possibility struck your soulmate harder than expected. Because suddenly they saw something they had never considered. While they were waiting for you to prove yourself again and again, perhaps you were waiting for them to finally meet you halfway. Something huge is waiting for you. Stay till the end. Your soulmate then did something they had avoided doing for a long time. They imagined what the situation must have looked like from your side. Not their side. Yours. Imagine them realizing that you may have watched them pull away without understanding why. That you may have sensed outside influence but could not prove it. That you may have wanted to explain yourself, yet every attempt felt like it was being filtered through suspicion. That you may have eventually become silent because repeating the same truth was exhausting. For the first time, your soulmate felt the weight of that perspective. And a quiet question appeared inside them: did I make this person feel like they had to defend themselves against something they never did? That question stayed. Your soulmate did not like the possibility, but they could not ignore it anymore. Then another memory surfaced. There had been one moment when you could have embarrassed them, exposed something private, or reacted harshly, but you did not. You chose restraint. At the time, they barely noticed. Now it seemed important. Because character is often revealed most clearly when someone has the opportunity to create chaos and chooses peace instead. Your soulmate remembered that. And suddenly the stranger's words made even more sense. Watch their actions. Your actions had been speaking quietly all along. Maybe your soulmate had simply been listening to louder voices. If you are still here, hold on to angel number 444. Let 444 represent stability, truth, and building something on what is real rather than on assumptions. If you choose, write 444 in the comments as your reminder to trust clear actions over confusing noise. And if these messages bring you comfort or inspiration and you genuinely wish to support the channel, super thanks is available. You can also find the Ko-Fi link in the description, with support options from $8 to $120. Please support only if it comfortably fits your situation. Your presence and time here are valuable on their own. Now come back to your soulmate, because something unexpected happened just as they were about to put the phone away. A notification appeared. Not from you. From someone connected to the past situation. The timing immediately caught their attention. Your soulmate opened it and saw a casual message, but one sentence inside it stood out. The person mentioned you. Not dramatically. Almost accidentally. Yet what they said contradicted something your soulmate had been told before. Your soulmate read the sentence twice. Then 3 times. Their heart began beating faster, not from fear, but from realization. One story they had believed about you could not be completely accurate. Someone had previously told them that you had said or done something. But this new message unintentionally revealed that the timing did not match. If the timing did not match, then perhaps the story itself had been misunderstood. Your soulmate immediately started remembering details. Dates. Conversations. Small inconsistencies they had ignored. Nothing necessarily proved some giant conspiracy. But it proved something more important: they had accepted conclusions without asking enough questions. And now those conclusions were beginning to collapse. Don't skip, because this changed your soulmate's next move. Instead of messaging you immediately, they decided they needed to understand the truth first. Not through gossip. Not through another person's interpretation. Directly. They reopened the unfinished message: "There's something I need to ask you." This time they did not erase it immediately. They added another sentence: "And I think I should have asked you a long time ago." Your soulmate stared at those words. Their thumb moved toward the send button. But right before touching it, they remembered one final thing the stranger had said, a sentence they had barely noticed during the conversation because everything else felt so overwhelming. She had said, "When you finally discover who this person really is, the bigger surprise will be discovering why you were so afraid to know." That sentence now felt almost too accurate. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that their fear might never have been about you. Maybe it was about what choosing honesty with you would require from them. Vulnerability. Accountability. Admitting they were wrong about certain things. Admitting they still cared. Admitting that distance had not erased the connection nearly as much as they pretended. Sometimes it is easier to call a connection complicated than to admit that it matters. Sometimes it is easier to blame timing than to admit we were not emotionally ready. Sometimes it is easier to listen to everyone else than to have the one conversation that could change everything. Your soulmate realized that. And for the first time, the question was no longer, "Should I stay away from this person?" The question became, "What if staying away has prevented me from discovering the truth?" That is a completely different question. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate did not sleep easily after that. Every time they closed their eyes, another memory surfaced. Your laughter. A conversation. A misunderstanding. A moment when they almost told you something important but changed the subject. They realized how many unfinished sentences existed between you. And unfinished sentences have a strange way of remaining alive in the mind. Eventually, your soulmate sat up and reached for their phone again. The unfinished message was still there. "There's something I need to ask you, and I think I should have asked you a long time ago." This time, they added one final line. A line they had never expected themselves to write. "Did I misunderstand you?" Your soulmate stared at it in complete silence. Those 4 words represented everything. Pride being lowered. Curiosity replacing assumptions. Honesty replacing avoidance. The stranger's warning had led them here, not farther away from you, but closer to asking the question they should have asked from the beginning. And just when your soulmate was preparing to decide whether to send it, something else happened. They opened one final old message from you, and inside it was a detail connected to the stranger's exact words. A detail your soulmate had forgotten completely. A detail that made them whisper to themselves, "There is no way I never noticed this." And that is where the next part becomes even more surprising, because your soulmate is about to uncover why one sentence you said long ago suddenly feels like the missing piece behind the stranger's entire warning. The sentence your soulmate found in that old message changed the entire night, because it was almost impossible to read it now without remembering the stranger. Months ago, you had written something your soulmate barely noticed at the time. One day, when everything around you becomes quiet, I hope you see me for who I am instead of who fear tells you I might be. Your soulmate stopped breathing for a second. Not because those words predicted anything supernatural, but because they sounded painfully close to what the stranger had said only hours earlier: stay away from the version of this person that fear created in your mind. Two different moments. Two completely different circumstances. Yet somehow, both pointed toward the same unanswered question. Had your soulmate ever truly seen you clearly? Don't skip, because the answer they began discovering was not what they expected. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because the stranger's warning was about to lead your soulmate toward a revelation that reached far beyond one misunderstood message. They read your old words again. Then again. Every time, another memory opened. There had been moments when you tried to explain yourself and your soulmate assumed you were trying to persuade them. There had been moments when you became quiet and they assumed you stopped caring. There had been moments when you gave them space and they interpreted the distance as proof that the connection was fading. But what if every interpretation had been backwards? What if you had stopped explaining because you knew real understanding could not be forced? What if you stepped back because you respected their choice? What if your silence was not absence but restraint? Your soulmate suddenly felt something they had avoided for a long time: responsibility. Not blame. Not shame. Responsibility. The understanding that perhaps some of the distance between you had been created by conclusions nobody ever verified. They opened another message. Then another. Your words looked different tonight. The meaning had not changed. Their perspective had. That difference was enormous. One message said you hoped they were doing well even if you could not be part of their life at that moment. Your soulmate once thought it sounded like goodbye. Tonight, they noticed something else inside it. There had been no anger. No pressure. No attempt to make them feel guilty. Just care. Another message contained something even simpler: I never wanted you to choose me because someone convinced you. I wanted you to know me and decide for yourself. Your soulmate leaned back and closed their eyes. That sentence felt almost like an answer to everything. Don't skip now, because this is where they finally understood what the stranger meant when she revealed who you really are. She had never described you as perfect. She had never told your soulmate that you could do no wrong. She had revealed something more believable and far more powerful: you were not the frightening story your soulmate had slowly constructed around you. You were a real person with real feelings, boundaries, mistakes, hopes, and intentions, and your soulmate had allowed uncertainty to turn you into a mystery instead of simply having an honest conversation. That realization brought another question. Who had benefited from the confusion? Your soulmate thought about the people who had offered opinions. Some may have genuinely believed they were protecting them. Some may have projected their own experiences. Some may simply have misunderstood the situation. But one particular person had repeatedly encouraged distance. Every time your soulmate considered speaking with you, this person had a reason why they should not. Wait. Don't trust it. They probably mean something else. You deserve someone easier. Your soulmate had accepted those statements because uncertainty made certainty from someone else feel comforting. Tonight, though, those old conversations sounded different. Your soulmate searched their memory carefully. Why had that person been so confident about intentions they could not possibly know? Why did every explanation about you seem to assume the worst? Why had nobody ever said, "Ask them directly"? That question became impossible to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you. Stay till the end, because your soulmate then remembered a conversation that had happened when you were not present. Someone had claimed that you had said something about your soulmate behind their back. At the time, your soulmate believed it because the story sounded detailed. There was a place. A supposed conversation. Even a description of how you allegedly said it. But now, after looking through old dates and messages, your soulmate realized something strange. On the day that conversation supposedly happened, you had been somewhere else. Your soulmate knew because you had sent them something from that other place. They stared at the date. Then at the old message. The pieces did not fit. Their pulse changed. Then where did that story come from? They whispered. There was no dramatic answer yet. No proof of some enormous hidden plot. But there was enough inconsistency to make them question everything they had accepted so easily. And that was all your soulmate needed to make a decision. They were no longer going to let other people explain you to them. If they wanted answers, they would ask you. Directly. But just as they were preparing to send the message, another thought interrupted them. What if you had already moved on emotionally? What if your silence meant you no longer wanted this conversation? What if contacting you now reopened something you had worked hard to make peace with? For the first time, your soulmate realized honesty required more than courage. It required respect. They could not simply return because they suddenly wanted answers. They would have to approach you carefully, without entitlement, without assuming you owed them anything. That realization changed the message they were writing. They deleted, "Did I misunderstand you?" and replaced it with something softer. "I've been thinking about something, and I realize I may have understood parts of our past incorrectly. If you're comfortable talking someday, I would like to hear your side directly." Your soulmate read it slowly. This was different. No demand. No dramatic promise. Just an opening. But their fingers still hovered over the screen. Don't skip, because what stopped them from sending it immediately was not fear anymore. It was one memory of you that suddenly returned with incredible clarity. You had once told them that timing mattered, not mystical timing, but emotional timing. That two people could care about each other and still need enough maturity to communicate properly. Your soulmate finally understood what you meant. Back then, they heard timing and thought you were making excuses. Now they realized you had been describing readiness. Perhaps the connection between you had not failed because there was nothing there. Perhaps it became difficult because both of you were trying to understand powerful feelings without enough clarity. And now, for the first time, your soulmate wondered whether they had changed enough to handle a conversation differently. If you are still here, remember angel number 555. Let 555 represent change, not a promise that something magical must happen, but a reminder that perspective can change, choices can change, and people can grow. If you feel connected to that idea, you can write 555 in the comments as your reminder. I welcome healthy change. Your soulmate put the phone down again, but this time they were not avoiding you. They were thinking. They went back through the stranger's words from beginning to end. First, stay away. Then, understand who this person really is. Then, stop listening to the noise. Then, look at their actions. And finally, the greater surprise will be discovering why you were afraid to know. That final sentence now seemed to contain the real revelation. Your soulmate had spent so much time questioning you because questioning themselves was harder. If they admitted you mattered, they would also have to admit that some of their choices were driven by fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of losing control. Fear of making the wrong decision. Fear of caring more than they wanted anyone to know. Fear that if they truly opened the door to you, the connection might become serious enough to change their plans. That was the secret beneath so much confusion. You were not necessarily dangerous to their peace. You were dangerous to the emotional walls they had carefully built around themselves. And those are two completely different things. Your soulmate began remembering the first time they realized your opinion mattered to them. It was something small. Maybe you disagreed with them gently. Maybe you noticed something about them nobody else noticed. Maybe you asked a question that remained in their mind after the conversation ended. They had felt exposed, not in a negative way, but seen. Truly seen. Some people enjoy being admired. Being understood is different. Understanding reaches places compliments never touch. Your soulmate realized you had reached those places. That is why forgetting you had been so difficult. Not because every moment between you was perfect. It was not. Not because your soulmate believed some guaranteed future existed. They did not know that. But because something about knowing you made them more aware of themselves. And now the stranger had unexpectedly forced that awareness back into the light. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next detail made your soulmate question whether the stranger herself had recognized something emotionally obvious rather than something mysterious. During their conversation, your soulmate had repeatedly touched or checked their phone whenever you came up. Their face changed when she mentioned the person they could not forget. Their body language had probably revealed far more than they realized. Perhaps the stranger did not know you in some impossible way. Perhaps she simply saw what your soulmate had been trying to hide from themselves. That possibility did not make the conversation less meaningful. It made it more meaningful. Because it meant the truth had been visible. Your soulmate had been carrying it openly without realizing it. They laughed quietly at themselves. Was I really that obvious? Maybe they were. Maybe everyone else had seen how strongly your name affected them long before they admitted it. Then they remembered something that made the laughter disappear. There was one person who had noticed. Someone close to your soulmate had once said, "You become completely different whenever that person comes up." At the time, your soulmate denied it immediately. They said they did not care. They changed the subject. But the person had smiled as if they did not believe a word. Tonight, that memory felt important. Your soulmate searched through another old conversation with that person. There it was. A message from months ago. You can keep saying you're over it, but every time their name appears, you suddenly have 1,000 questions. Your soulmate stared at the screen. The stranger had not created the feeling. The feeling had been there all along. She simply interrupted the denial. Don't skip here. This is where your soulmate made the decision that could change the entire direction of the story. They decided that tomorrow they would stop investigating the past through everyone else. They would stop collecting opinions. Stop replaying rumors. Stop creating imaginary answers. They would either speak directly with you or finally accept that silence was their own choice. There would be no more pretending they had no control over the situation. That decision alone made them feel lighter. But then they noticed one thing that complicated everything again. An old voice note. From you. One they had never listened to completely. Your soulmate remembered starting it months earlier, becoming emotional, and stopping halfway through. They had told themselves they would finish it later. They never did. Until now. Their finger moved toward the play button. The recording began. Your voice was calmer than they remembered. You were not angry. You were not pleading. You were simply explaining something. I don't know what you've heard, and I don't know what people around you think of me. But I hope one day you ask me instead of carrying questions alone. Your soulmate immediately paused the recording. Their eyes widened. The words were too connected to everything happening tonight. Not because you could have known about the stranger. You could not. But because apparently you had recognized the problem long before your soulmate did. You knew there were unanswered questions. You knew outside voices were influencing things. And instead of attacking anyone, you had asked for direct communication. Your soulmate pressed play again. Your voice continued. I'm not asking you to believe everything I say. I'm asking you to judge me by what you experienced with me, not by what someone else imagined about me. There it was. Almost exactly what the stranger said. Look at their actions. Your soulmate felt their throat tighten. The recording continued. You spoke about respecting their decision. You said you would not chase them endlessly. You said that if distance was truly what they wanted, you would accept it. But then came the line your soulmate had never heard because they had stopped the recording too early the first time. And if you ever come back, please come back because you want truth, not because someone frightened you into losing me. Silence filled the room. Your soulmate could not move. That sentence was the missing piece. Not because it predicted tonight. Not because it proved fate. But because it revealed that you had understood their emotional conflict far more clearly than they realized. You had sensed fear was shaping their decisions. And rather than fighting it, you stepped away. Your soulmate finally saw that choice differently. Maybe you did not disappear because your feelings were weak. Maybe you disappeared because your self-respect was strong. That realization carried weight. If angel number 777 means something positive to you, let it represent deeper understanding and choosing wisdom over assumptions. You can write 777 in the comments as your personal reminder. I listen before I judge. For those who genuinely enjoy these messages and want to help support more of them, Super Thanks is available, and there is a Ko-Fi link in the description with support options between $8 and $120. Please only support if it is comfortable for you. There is never any pressure. Now stay with this, because your soulmate was about to hear the final seconds of that forgotten recording, and those seconds changed the question they had been asking all night. Your voice became quieter. You said, "There is one thing I never told you because I thought you needed to discover it on your own." Your soulmate leaned closer to the phone. I think the reason this became so complicated is because neither of us knew how much it mattered until we were already afraid of losing it. The recording ended. Your soulmate sat completely still. That line changed everything. Not because it solved every problem. It did not. Not because it guaranteed some perfect reunion. Nothing could guarantee that. But because it gave language to the emotional pattern both of you may have been living through. Sometimes people do not become afraid because they feel nothing. Sometimes they become afraid because they suddenly realize something matters. Your soulmate finally understood why the entire connection had always felt so intense despite the silence. Maybe the unanswered questions themselves were proof that neither person had received enough closure to truly move forward peacefully. Your soulmate picked up the unfinished message again. I've been thinking about something, and I realize I may have understood parts of our past incorrectly. If you're comfortable talking someday, I would like to hear your side directly. They added one more sentence. I listened to your old voice message tonight. I should have finished it a long time ago. Their finger hovered over send. This time, the hesitation lasted only seconds. Then something unexpected appeared on the screen. Your soulmate noticed your profile had changed. A small detail. Maybe a new picture. Maybe a new line. Maybe something that suggested your life had continued moving while they remained stuck in old questions. That realization hit them immediately. You had not been frozen in time waiting for them. You had been living. Growing. Becoming someone they might need to meet again rather than assume they still knew completely. And suddenly your soulmate felt urgency, not panic, but clarity. If they wanted the truth, they could not wait forever. Opportunities for honest conversation do not always remain open indefinitely. People heal. People change. People learn to protect their peace. Your soulmate knew that. So they looked once more at the message. They remembered the stranger. They remembered your voice note. They remembered every rumor, every misunderstanding, every unfinished sentence. And for the first time, they were not asking, what if speaking to them goes wrong? They were asking, what if never speaking to them becomes the regret I carry? That question made the decision almost inevitable. Their thumb moved. The message was ready. But right before they sent it, another notification appeared from the very person who had once warned your soulmate about you. And what that person admitted in the next few lines was something your soulmate had never expected to read, because it revealed that one of the biggest misunderstandings between you may have started with a sentence that was never supposed to reach them at all.